to another Thursday Thought. I'm joined today by Alex again, and we're looking forward to having a real good just kind of back and forth discussion on some of the questions that you all have been submitting. And then we also threw in a couple questions, you'll know the ones we threw in, just to kind of give you our thoughts on where we're at right now. So Alex, how you doing today?
Doing great here at the office today, but doing fantastic.
Well,
I've been here doing all the in between virus, scrub the floor, Cinderella type stuff, being sure that we're ready to go again soon.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that we've been getting, Alex, is, and these are a bunch of disclosures that we just got to put up. You can read those. We're not offering any legal advice or any of that sort of thing. But one of the questions that we're getting, Alex, though, a lot of is, how are you handling the pandemic, and what are the next steps for reopening the office? So you want to take that one for us?
Sure. The next steps are to have a plan in place that allows flexibility. So when we talk about a plan being in place, we don't have just a plan A. We have a plan about A through probably Q or L at this point, somewhere in that ballpark. Because what we're looking at is varying time frames, varying phases of reopening, but also kind of a new reality of how things are done. So what our primary focuses are right now are, again, to be sure that our operations right now in the current situation are working efficiently, that clients' needs are taken care of and anticipated, and that things are going the right direction for the folks that we're currently working with, as well as anybody that has new and timely questions. Along those lines, though, too, we have to make a plan for what's next and how we're going to reopen the office and what that's going to mean and how it's going to look. And one thing that we have found out through all this process is that we can do some more remote work than we used to. We can have employees that spend time at home as they need to. For example, sick kids, or if they want to have some extended travel time, they can do those things and do it in a way that's actually functional, and they can still get some productivity done too. But what our plan is going forward is we've established a couple of tentative dates to reopen the office, to have new clients coming in, to have people coming in for normal meetings and normal schedules. But we also want to be sure that we're doing that in a way that allows for change if those dates aren't feasible as we get further down the road, but also that protects ourselves as well as our client base from any exposure to anything that's currently happening out there. So we're scaling things back to more of a level of necessity, where there are certain meetings that absolutely should eventually take place in person. But at the same time, there's lots of instances where we have a client base that is in a lot of ways at later stages of age, and needs to be sure that they can be in a place that we don't expose them to things that a previous client brought in, for example, and exposed our team to. So we want to be sure that we're taking precautions in our office as we do reopen, to do things remotely as we can, but also to, at the same time, be sure we're clean between clients coming in, being sure that the staff is taking care of themselves, being sure that we're in a place where we don't potentially spread things when we get to that point in time where it can be a normal functioning office in the new world again. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We do have timelines in place. We're not going to release those quite yet, but those are out there to get some things moving forward again.
Yeah, that's really good stuff, Alex. In fact, the only thing that I'd add on that is the only timeline that we do have set in stone right now is that Fayette County Schools, of course, where we're located here in Lexington, Kentucky, their last day of school is May 27th. So that is the last day that all of us that are having to now homeschool our children, which never was the plan, can actually circle on the calendar and mark off. And after that date, I don't think we have to worry about the kids at all, which will make things probably 100% easier just doing day-to-day life at the office, regardless of whether we're in the office or whether we're here at home. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, that's going to be a big change. In fact, we've even talked in our reopening dates that a lot of us here do have children, and that we're planning around that, because we know that that's going to be a factor, that they're home when they normally wouldn't be. They're still doing schoolwork, and we're having to make that adjustment going forward. My kids are 6 and 9, so they're kindergarten and 3rd grade, and they're having hours and hours of work that fortunately Jamie's at home right now while I'm at the office a lot of days, and she's able to help out with that and be sure things are going as they should. But it's a tough time. We're looking forward to getting those dates back to a normal reality for them, and getting them past school and into summer soon.
All right, let's hit on the next question. The next question that we got in was, do you see any trends developing from this pandemic? And I'll kind of step in on that one. I think, what we're hearing is experts are predicting, whether you believe the experts or not, that this is going to be here for at least another 18 months. So when I just think of the industries and the trends and the areas that are being impacted, I mean, I think restaurants are the number one thing that's very easy for all of us to think about, right? We used to go out to restaurants and not, have like a second thought about who we were sitting next to. In fact, the last time I could even, the only other thought I had if I was in a restaurant, if I was going out for a nice date night and someone had their kids there, I might say, well, I want to go to that table. But there was never a thought of, did those kids have a cold, or does this person over here, where were they last week, or have they traveled anywhere outside of my range? There was never any of those thoughts, which are now prevalent. In addition, the only other time I can imagine thinking about and noticing that maybe we were not sitting in a good place in the restaurant when I was a kid growing up in Seattle, and my dad used to take me to Denny's, right, for breakfast. Okay, and we get the Grand Slam. And I remember one day that I just remember this as like a kind of probably preteen. The lady asked my dad, do you want to sit in smoking or non-smoking, right? And Dad said, well, non-smoking, we don't smoke, right? So they walked us in the restaurant, and of course, we're sitting in a booth, and literally right here is a plastic divider, and there's smoke billowing over the plastic divider, right? So that's the last time I can even think of as a child where my dad's like, we need to move tables because we're in non-smoking, and what's the difference? We're sitting right next to this other person. So I think with restaurants, you're hearing that they're only going to fill to about 70% capacity, most likely. So that 30% of restaurants are completely gone, right? That business is not returning for restaurants. That dining space is not going to return. Restaurants will have disposable menus, most likely. I don't even know if when you go into a restaurant anymore, you're going to be handed one of those spiffy iPads for the drink list, right? Unless they're sanitizing it every time they hand it out. But the cost of going out to a restaurant is going to have to go up, just because if they can't flip the tables that as many times, and or they can't re-sanitize in between guests to maybe a higher level than what is currently happening, right? Just sit down and they wipe the crumbs off the table. Then, there's just no way that the cost can increase. So I think restaurants are going to be a big area, and whether or not people, even if they can seat people, if we'll see how short people's memories are as they go back out and they integrate. Another area that I think is important is obviously, what's going to happen on the travel side. Between the airline travel, are we going to continue to pack folks into planes like sardines, or are we going to take out a seat here and there to actually have that social distancing in there? Same thing with cruises. Someone said on a call the other day, they said, what are they going to do to attract people back to the cruising, right? Because the last few months, people basically been referring to cruises as like death traps, right? And someone said, well, I don't think it's going to be difficult. I think all we're going to have to offer is 2 free drink tickets, and that will get everybody back on the boat. So, and I really honestly believe that a lot of people's memory is going to be short, and that will happen. But there are going to be things that the industry has to do, to certainly change. And we're going to have increased prices at restaurants, in plane travel, right? We're going to have, I think some other growing trends. I honestly feel like the mall, for all intents and purposes, may be dead forever. It took a recession to really slow down and shut a lot of malls in a lot of parts of the country, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But this is different. This is, are you going to want to go around and walk around other strangers, or are you would you rather shop online, right? Use, maybe with, we have all these 3D headsets. So maybe we'll be able to do, virtual 3D shopping and fit a mannequin online with our measurements. And once you take those measurements with the old fashioned tape measure, right? Then you can actually look at how clothes would fit your body, order them. And if you don't like them, you send them back, but you never have to actually go into another store. And I know there's companies already out there that are having personal shoppers reach out even during this pandemic electronically to people to do their shopping with them and help them and say, oh, you look great in that, Mr. Smith. Not that I've done it, but as I imagine it. And then delivery services. I think that, more and more, I don't know about you, but Instacart is like I feel like I'm dating Instacart sometimes because they ring my doorbell so many times. Whether they're bringing stuff from Kroger or from Myers, from Costco, but more and more, why in the world would I go into a non-sterile environment if I don't have to? Why would I subject myself to that? There was an article in the Herald Leader this morning that talked about what real estate agents are doing with real estate showings and how they're the PPE stuff they're wearing the masks and the gloves, and they're wearing booties on their shoes, and they're only saying only touch the essential things that you have to touch, maybe open a door or something like that. But everything else, as you go through real estate, I wouldn't be surprised if there'll still be some of that, but more and more, they will build out more real estate shopping, truly 3D, and it will become a bigger trend. And you'll only look at the 2 or 3 houses that you've really narrowed your search down versus walking through 30 and having like open houses like we were having in the next 18 months at least. And then lastly, I think group events and, any kind of place where people are gathered. I mean, I never thought about the fact we used to celebrate with friends, when they Alex goes to Mexico on spring break. That's where he was supposed to go this spring break, right? That got canceled. I was supposed to go to England. Well, Alex and I would have walked back into the office and said to each other in normal times, how was your trip? Tell me about the highlights. What food did you eat? What beaches did you go to? What family members did you spend time with? What was the good things? What were the bad things? How were the kids? Right? All those kinds of fun things. And now it's more like, so you were outside of our bubble, huh? Well, I'll see you in a couple weeks. I hate being there, but my brain's never been there before. But I think now it kind of is. So in that same time or a thought, people with specific health issues are going to have to be a little bit more, I think, careful about going out, cooking at home, entertainment at home, gyms. I love going to the gym, but do I want to immediately jump back into this even when they say, hey, it's okay to start coming back out, and immediately go someplace where people are sweating and breathing heavily and germs are flying? It seems like a big risk right now before we even have anything close to a vaccine or really a well-known definite treatment if you do get to the point that you have to go into intensive care. I'd like to see it where there's a better than 50-50 chance of your survival if you have to be in ICU. So those are kind of the trends that I see developing socially and just in patterns. And it's going to be, I think, just very interesting to see how that plays out throughout society, and then also how it plays out in publicly traded companies. Alex, how about you?
I think that to kind of add to that, it isn't just an issue of what trends will occur. It'll be the perception of those trends, the acceptance and appreciation of being able to do those things, and evaluation of doing that. Currently, the delivery service, for example, that maybe you didn't really value before, you're seeing a real use for outside just convenience. The local restaurant that you're able to go to and be able to enjoy a meal with friends and family. Before was something that was kind of overlooked, and now it's going to be something that's valued. So even in a world where maybe the tables are only half the tables in the restaurant that there previously were, and before you would never think of the idea of having to call ahead and wait for that space. Now those things will be a lot more valued, a lot more appreciated, and kind of create a different perception of how things are working in society after having gone through this experience. So my thoughts are less about the direct how are things going to be different, but how are they going to be experienced differently and treated differently and thought of differently after all of this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thought. One thing as we prepared for this that Alex and I were talking about is, we've been business partners since we'll start in the business in August 1st, 2005, right? So we're celebrating 15 years with the business here this August, just in a couple months. But
big party, you're all invited. It's going to be, shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to have a big throwdown, and give a lot of hugs and high fives and handshakes. But no, Alex and I we always laugh about it because we both see the world through a little bit of a different lens. And so I thought these kind of questions and be able to kick it back and forth would be, just a good example for you all to see as, how do these guys as business partners, we know they're different personalities, but how do they relate within a business setting and just, seeing these kinds of, how do they deal with these type of things? So, Alex, another question that I had that came up was, what will be the difference in a business that survives or fails? Who survives and who's at risk?
Sure. Well, one thing to keep in mind is that even though most businesses have in a lot of ways stopped over this period of time, the clock's still been moving forward. Things have still been happening. So you have a lot of businesses that really totally ceased planning, ceased forward looking, and have been sitting there thinking that this is a a 2-day event and treating it as a pause, versus taking this as this is a large part of their year. This is going to end up being, when it's all said and done, a quarter of their year or more. Who knows? Where things are fundamentally disrupted. So during that time period, from a productive person in a business, there has to be some forward progress or plan for that happening. It can't be a holding pattern for that entire time. So the businesses that will probably have the biggest difference and have the biggest opportunity or weakness in all this are really going to be the ones that were being proactive during this time period where they were forced to pause for a while. And being proactive can be a lot of different things. Being proactive can be, for example, we saw for a lot of businesses, small and medium businesses, the payroll protection loans that were offered over the past really few weeks. The ones that were very proactive in approaching those and getting those loans, a lot of those have secured those before the first round of funding ran out. We of course found out today there's more funding being available as a second round that was just approved a few hours ago. So that will start the process all over again for the folks that missed the first one. But those kind of moves that were taken during that time period are what help those businesses still thrive and function and move forward, and not run into a problem where this lag time, which is still involved expenses, still involved employees, still involved things moving forward around them, hinders them to the point where they can't recover during the course of the year or possibly ever. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at. We talk about how businesses provide their services. I think we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but there's going to be a change there too. But really it's the businesses that have figured out what they're going to have to do during this time period where they're dysfunctional for most parts, and what they can do on the backside to be sure they're serving their clients, serving their employees, and at the end of the day, serving the idea of being profitable again at some point soon to move forward. We're getting a lot of questions right now as a company from our business owner clients about how does this all work? What's the next step? How are we going to do this? How we can take advantage of this horrible situation? So we're seeing that going forward, and I think those are the business owners that expect to see Excel on the backside of this. The ones that fundamentally decide to close things down and just sit on the sidelines and wait, those are the ones that are going to have a harder time reemerging from this. And it's going to be very sector by sector and time frame by time frame with factors beyond their control. But the flexibility and the proactiveness are going to be a big thing.
Yeah, that's really good. I think I agree with you so much on the idea of just businesses have to kind of change the way they approach their day to day. You know, you can't just be status quo. You have to just think, well, this is a different environment. You know, we've got to change the approach that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. I think number one, I wouldn't be surprised if out of this that, you know, at some point the health department or someone comes out and they say, just like a restaurant, you know, won't be able to simply exist with like having that inspection grade A, B, or C on the window. I wouldn't be surprised if businesses are also going to be visited and they're going to have, you know, health department inspections, you know, for the next few months or years or who knows. But just to say, you know, this business is doing what they need to do to make sure that their customers coming in and those using this business, this service, you know, are safe. Because I think the number one thing as a consumer that, you know, I want to make sure is answers is I don't want to just be told, well, I mean, we're all wearing gloves and we're wearing masks and we're wearing booties or whatnot, and we spray some Lysol, you know, and you know, I mean, no, I mean, if it's me, I want to know, I don't want them just to do the government minimum. I want them to do whatever they have to do to assure me they're doing the best efforts possible, that they're putting me as a customer in a safe place. And, you know, the example of that I've recently witnessed was, I think it's, you know, we had this change, you know, a few weeks back, and people don't even really remember it, but maybe a month back or so, where people were just going to the grocery stores and they were going up and down different lanes and they were going all in. And there was really just, it was just like wear masks, wear gloves. And you had all those funny memes on Facebook of all these people, you know, one guy was wearing like a scuba gear, you know, walking through with gloves, you know, doing his shopping. another guy was biting his glove off, as he was checking his phone. And there was a thing that said, the meme said, we're thinning the herd basically. Cause the idea was the virus was on the rubber glove. But back before the federal government said, hey, we need to kind of limit the number of people in stores and we need to do these things, the first company to pop up there, to my knowledge, was Costco. And Costco popped up and they said, we're going to put some lines in place. We're going to start to tape the floors. We're going to start to monitor the number of people going in. And as those people come out, we're going to let additional customers in. We're going to create some tracks that people can follow. So we're not just going up and down aisles constantly, so there can be some separation. We are going to require you to wear, a face mask at minimum, not only to protect you, but also to protect our own employees, which I think is really, really important. It's not just about protecting the customers, it's also making sure the employees of that business stay healthy. And then, as you go through the store and you check out, there's safeguards for the folks checking you out. They're sanitizing the stations and even the credit card and everything that you're using. And in that regard, when I went through Costco, I just felt like, okay, sure, I'm a little leery of everything out there and who knows what could happen, but I feel like they're doing everything. Walking through there, I felt like that was a much different experience than going to Kroger's at the time. I think that the at-risk group, and it's not really in the sense of at-risk I'm not taking this question as to mean like, who's at risk of failure, but maybe who's at risk of just not being the same. I really think the real estate market's got some real issues potentially. I think car dealerships, just imagine all the test drives that people take. Imagine having to sanitize every single car after a test drive. That's wild. Movie theaters, same thing. Child care centers. That's one thing our staff was talking about is what's going to happen to child care centers where they've let everybody go. How do they even reopen? And a lot of these centers, what they're collecting in unemployment benefits between the basic state employment benefit and what the government is giving them is actually giving them higher pay than what they were earning before. So therefore, there's no incentive for them to go back to work, which is a really interesting situation. And what is my gym going to do to protect me? It may just be, I'm not going to necessarily walk back into a YMCA anytime soon. I could see that going and working out in a very small group of people that you're going to see those people on a regular basis and there's some accountability and temperature checks or whatnot, and or one-on-one sessions could become much more, attractive over time. But I just think at the end of the day, the businesses that, that aren't going to pop back are the businesses that think it's status quo, and the businesses that survive, like you mentioned, Alex, they're going to be the ones that embrace this and say, okay, this is a terrible situation, but where do the opportunities lie for us to not only make sure that we keep our customers safe, do our day-to-day business in maybe a new way, and also keep our employees safe. So, and I think that comes down to our own conference room, right? We're going to have to try to figure out how we sanitize all our surfaces, our doors. We were already wiping things down. We always do that anyway during winters. But, now it's like, what do? You got to get maybe we'll get one of the interns a little backpack on and go around with a sprayer or something and have some fun with it. I'm not really sure exactly what that solution is going to be, but I'm sure there'll be some guidelines. So the next question we had is, it's earnings season. What are you guys looking for in the companies that you follow? And I'll just take that one. I've been listening to a lot of conference calls right now. And really the two things I'm really interested in hearing about is how businesses are being affected by COVID-19. And I want to hear those businesses say one of two things. I want them to be able to say, this is our risk. This is how it currently impacts our business. And these are our projections going forward. And I think if a company can say that, I think that you can own that company. But for the companies in the group too, that when asked, how's COVID-19, impacting your business, if they say, well, we're currently shut down, we can't do any business, right? Think cruise companies, restaurants, retailers, even like Live Nation, companies that host kind of, concert hosting companies, travel companies, right? Then I think it's going to be very, very tough to make a new investment into those types of companies, as there's just too many unknowns. And maybe they have cash to survive a year. Well, what if this goes longer than a year? Or what if that's cash to survive, assuming that their business is back to normal in a year? And everyone's saying it's at least 18 months, projected. Whether it is or not, we'll see. But, if they have cash for 12 months, then they're going to have month 13 is going to be a problem. So I think that, that's a big issue. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of companies out there that are, financially borrowing money currently to pay their dividends to investors versus just cutting them. And, I just don't think that the company, if they're not bringing in enough money and they're paying a dividend and the dividend can't be sustained, that's a big question mark for me. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that say, well, this is just a little dip. I mean, we just shut the economy down completely. And as soon as we start back up the economy, everything will be just like it was. And so we should be fine. I'm very leery of that. Not that I don't want that. That's the optimist in me says, I want everything to go back to perfectly normal. But the realist in me says, that's not what these health professionals are saying. And so I think that, until those companies that are paying dividends that are maybe historically higher than what they have been, until they come out and they actually cut those dividends, I just think that they really can't be trusted. But once they do cut the dividend, I think those are companies that you can look at purchasing. And then more than anything, I think the last thing I'm looking for in there is I'm trying to listen on these conference calls and hear, what are the leaders of these companies doing? What type of leadership are they putting forward? What's their message, right? How are they approaching this? And what's their game plan? Just as we talked about with our own business, what is their game plan in this new world that we all find ourselves operating in? Because I really do think that it's just important to have leadership at the top. And, by that, what you're seeing in the articles, a lot of CEOs and founders of business that stepped away at certain points have stepped back. I just saw an article today that said, Jeff Bezos, right, who founded Amazon, has now gone from being focused on dreams and new ideas and things to grow the business and he's now focused on day-to-day operation decisions. So to me, if Amazon is doing that, and they're one of the companies that really is doing well in this, then every other business CEO needs to be back focused on the nuts and bolts of the business. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Alex, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, that as far as earnings season, that really a lot of it right now isn't just a factor of what the numbers are reflecting. It's the why the numbers are that way and not what they expect, what the world expects going forward. Because you're going to see some big variations even inside of industry groups and how they interpret things that have happened and timeframes that were involved and kind of where they're positioned now. It's one of those things where not everybody's doing this the same way. And so looking at the why is probably as important, if not more important in a lot of instances than the pure numbers. So it's a different way of analyzing things and looking at charts and looking at earnings and seeing how it's going to work. Figuring out the fundamental why behind it, not just what has happened.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. All right, next question. What have you learned personally going through a pandemic? And I think there's a lot of things we could probably, for a lot of us, we could scratch out pandemic. We could put any other sort of thing in life, right? But I would say for me, the biggest thing I personally have learned, and I think probably if you read my Thursday Thoughts newsletter that I put out every Thursday from the office, you probably picked it up over the last few weeks, but it's my kids. I actually had to go several weeks without them, just kind of due to some self-quarantining and just making sure that I was safe to be around. And honestly, it really was not fun. In fact, I was actually miserable during that time, and I didn't even actually know that I was miserable. But I thought it was just like, this is just a pandemic, man period that I'm having. And, but it wasn't. It actually was that the kids were not in my life other than through FaceTime and, text messages and things like that. But it's totally different versus having your child right in front of you and hearing their laugh and seeing the emotion and being able to reach out and hug them or give them knuckles or high five them or, just heck, even discipline them, it's all just part of that normal routine and ritual and structure that I realized I did not have for a couple of weeks there. And so it's actually helped me force myself to be more productive instead of saying I have the whole day to get these 2 or 3 projects done. Now I'm like, I've got 45 minutes for this, I've got 30 minutes for this, and I got 15 minutes for this. And in between that, I've got, a Google call with this kid. I've got the Zoom FaceTime and a sing along. I've got a WebEx class, and I got to make sure, he's doing this, counting to 100 forward and backward. And he's writing his journal, and he's logging onto his classroom to do his schoolwork. And so I really think that routine and structure has really helped focus me as a person. And some people will say, well, Dave, I mean, how is that really focusing you? Because what's the difference between you having kids at home versus being at the office? At the office, you didn't have kids. And no, I don't. But at the office, I do have a lot of different people that are constantly popping in and out of my office and saying, hey, Dave, do you have time for just 1 second? I've got one little quick question for you. I just want to ask you your opinion on this, and that. And they're constantly interrupting me. And we talk about that. But the reality is I'm realizing it's not that much different than having 3 children run around everywhere. Not to say our employees are children, but the interaction and the interruptions are very similar in how it makes your brain function and the immediacy that is almost assigned that you're like, okay, this person just left. I better do this before someone else comes in the door. So I am really appreciative and thankful for the kids and having them back. At first it was like, but then, I mean, I just realized they're actually making me focus more during this time period than when I was just here by myself. Big difference. Alex, how about you?
I would say a lot of it is to kind of add to what you were saying, is that there's always more happening than you're aware of in people's lives at that particular moment. So right now, everybody you meet at any point during the day, every conversation you have, you're kind of having that same, we're going through a stressful time in a foxhole together kind of mentality to different degrees and for different reasons. But the same thing is true. And like you mentioned with kids at home during school, I have 2 kids at home doing kindergarten and 3rd grade work. And there's different times in their day where it's just as important to figure out why they're not wanting to do it, what's happening with it, if they're happy to do it, what the reward is, and where their mind's at versus saying, just go do it. And the same thing is really true under stress for it seems like all of us. So as we interact with the people in our lives, whether it's employees or kids or friends or family or anybody else that you randomly run across, what they're going through at that point in time is probably as important as what you need to be doing with them at that moment. So that's been kind of a good reality check and good reminder that's come from this, because when else in your life has literally everybody else you've interacted with been going through some form of stress that is profound and life changing. Besides right now, usually it's a segment of the society that they're dealing with that's true for, but now you can see it in everybody. And it's a different mentality, and it's kind of interesting to see how it affects people.
So Alex, I guess what happens next? Can you at least fill us all in? Because we're all wondering.
Sure. Okay. Well, and what happens next? There's a lot of different next too. There's next tomorrow. There's next end of the month. There's end of the year. Everything in between. I think that a lot of the key in what happens next is go ahead and make plans for what your next is going to be. Instead of the idea of don't ever plan a family vacation or corporate event again. The idea in my mind is go ahead and plan that next. Plan the next business project you're doing. Plan the next family event you're going to do, whatever it is, to be sure that there is a next. And if it has to be rescheduled, well, we've all gone through rescheduling that's unprecedented. I mean, and we've all made it through that so far. So it's one of those things that the next is learning flexibility and making those plans. Like I said before, we have a plan for the full reopening of our office. I'm here now, but I'm pretty much here by myself. We have some tech difficulties with the copier right now. So there's a copier repair guy here. Other than that, we're pretty much running from home. But the idea is there is going to be a next for our business. There is a next for fun social trips and for business activities and all these different things. So go ahead and put those on the calendar. If they change, they change. But there is going to be a next, and anticipate that. the idea of sitting and doing nothing, it isn't good from a mental standpoint, but also it's bad from a productivity standpoint, from a future standpoint. So be ready for that next, whatever it is for you, and plan that through your business activities, and know that what you're doing today does still matter, and move forward with that. So, like I said, what we're focusing on right now is what's going to happen in our business in the coming weeks as we look at having a reemergence of things as whatever normal is then. We've had to cancel two family trips so far and deal with American Airlines and Delta respectively, and different hotels and travel insurances and those things over the past few days. And that's been the current. But the next is, how about my wife's birthday trip coming up at the end of the year? That's still on the calendar. That's months away. We're going to assume that's still going to happen at this point in time. If it does change, we'll figure out a new next and go from there.
Yeah. It's really tough having, when I found myself too, just sitting around and thinking like of all the things that have been canceled, and it seems like every week on the calendar, there's something new. I try to go out a week or two and just delete things, just so I don't even see them, right? I'll just have a night of just deleting. I'll delete 2 or 3 weeks. And then just this week, like I had something pop up and I was like, dadgum, I was looking forward to that. And I totally even forgotten about it by now, right? It was a concert, but not happening. So one thing I've done just from a mental standpoint, I've just tried to say to myself, Dave, this is a new chapter in the book of your life. And because we all, I believe, have our own books and we all have our own chapters, and people come and go through our chapters, right? And activities and happenings and challenges come and go, good times, bad times. But I've just tried to say to myself, okay, you know what? This is just something new. And this is a new chapter that you had absolutely no idea you were writing in your life's book. But there may be some new habits that are formed during this period. There may be some new intentions and some new goals that you actually develop even over the next few weeks until we are out and about and kind of, again, changing the next chapter, right, of life. But I think that the mental approach I'm taking is just that you may actually be really surprised, even when we look back 6, 12, 18 months, at some of the new habits or some of the just new daily things that we started doing, that we may look back and say, how in the world did we even do that before? And I think that really, that's going to be the interesting part of this whole thing is as we live day to day through the next, and like Alex said, make plans going forward, for future trips and activities and get-togethers and things of that nature. Just kind of keeping that hope and that faith that's going to happen. But it's going to be really, I think, interesting just to look back and say, of all the things that were canceled, what did I really miss out on? And what are the things that were new opportunities that opened up to me throughout this that I had no idea was even an option, So what are the first couple things, Alex, that you want to do when it's deemed safe to circulate? I know a lot of people this is a question we've been asking every single client family that we're doing quarterlies on and conference calls on right now. And it's interesting to see their responses. But, I'm sure everyone is wondering, like, what are we going to be doing as soon as we can go back out? Is there anything on your mind?
This is probably a weird thing because I do enjoy time away from the office and time away from work. I'm looking forward to our office family getting back together and actually having a normal kind of social atmosphere in our office, and actually doing things that are with our clients and with each other as a group again. That it seems like we've been in a routine of getting things done for other folks the past few weeks, which has been great. But the folks that I end up spending many hours of my day in life with are kind of removed at this point. So it'll be nice to have that back again. The other thing I'm looking forward to is seeing local businesses start to thrive again. I know that everybody's been going through hard times that are unique to them and their situation during this, but I'm looking forward to seeing restaurants come back alive again, seeing local stores and independent businesses start to thrive again, seeing people get back into a reality that maybe they appreciate a little bit more going forward, and have been able to give some thought to what that's going to look like and make those important changes and see how things look. So I'm kind of just looking forward to seeing the world sort of get back on track at some point, and move on from this after having been through this experience. I think it's going to be something that changes the entire generation, and hopefully we can make it be something that's for the best. But that we can also experience in little bites and just our normal daily interactions.
Yeah, that's really true. I honestly had no idea how much I missed you. So, you know, for all of you that know me, I mean, I am we've been joking back and forth that Alex actually found a Flowbee that he was going to give as a gag gift, right, Alex?
That's right. I bought that for a Secret Santa thing like 4 years ago, I think, and never ended up using it. But I will say I've gotten two haircuts at home since then, and they were haircuts. They're probably in my. It turns out that Dr. Roy at home is one of my 10 best barbers ever. She watched 30 minutes of YouTube videos and did a good job of figuring out how to be, on the list of 12 barbers. She's in the best 10.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I haven't followed the Flowbee route yet, but I've been doing a little trimming and this and that. But I cannot wait, number one, just to get my haircut again, because everybody knows me, knows how important that is. But it's not just the haircut. It's, and I hate to say this, but I'm a little trashy like this, but it's the gossip that comes with the haircut. I go to a salon. Alex goes to a barber. He wouldn't be caught dead in the salon. But I love going to the salon and just shooting the breeze and just hearing the latest, whatever's going around in life. And heck, that's when I catch up on entertainment television in the background, and find out what's really going on in the world. But it's, just the interaction with people is, I think, the number one thing, whether it be the office, whether it going out and just meeting somebody for happy hour after the haircut, meeting somebody for a meeting at the end of the day, having a glass of wine. I can't wait. Just the ritualistic things like, our church is completely online, but the people at our church are not. I have a group of guys that from our church is a Bible study group that we meet every Thursday or the first Thursday of every month. And it's called Brew Brothers. It's for guys that like to brew beer. I do nothing about brewing beer. I am, two right thumbs, right? But I can appreciate anybody that enjoys chemistry or cooking or baking. And I like to bake bread and cook and things. So I get together with these guys, been doing it for a year and a half since the group started. And it's just a fun group of guys, we start with 10 and now we have 30 to 50 guys that come out different events. But it's just a fun social atmosphere to catch up with people and see where they're at. I have realized how much I miss just that, even that once a month interaction. And we did do actually a Zoom meeting with everybody in the start of April, and we'll probably do one the start of May. But, I miss giving people hugs. I'm a hugger. I know that's probably going to change. But, that's just how I show affection towards people, and I miss, anything that's group oriented. So it breaks my heart, when we look at our calendar and we say, oh, we're probably going to have to cancel half of our social, things that we typically do, just within Family Financial Partners business, much less in our personal lives. So I just cannot wait to get out there. And then of course, the number one thing, Alex, I know you talked about trips canceled. I think we're probably pretty much like anybody else that as soon as it's deemed okay to take a trip somewhere, we're going to both be jetting somewhere and using those voucher credits that we've got stored up. So, well, guys, I hope that this was, something that you found beneficial. We wanted to have a little fun today and just kind of fill you in a little bit on some of the thoughts on just economically, but then also just within our own world and personally. And so if you have any questions out of this that we can help you with, if there's anything that you want us to give you kind of a second opinion on, or just a financial question that you're like, hey, I hate to bug you, but I want to ask you this. First of all, let me just say, you never are bugging us. I've had so many people over the last month and a half since we've all been kind of housebound say, Dave, I hate to bug you, and I've stopped every single one of them and said, look, I'm an extrovert. I love people. I love talking to people. So call me all you want. I'll be honest, if I'm about to jump on a conference call and I've got 2 minutes, I'm going to tell you I got 2 minutes or I'm going to call you back. But I'll take as much time to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. Look at whatever you want to do, because we want to make sure, first and foremost, that you are feeling good about your relationship with us. And also, if you're in a situation where you do not have a relationship with us and you'd like a second opinion, or you feel like, hey, these are people that I could get along with, I could work with, then just give us a ring, shoot us an email, and we'll talk a little bit about how we work with clients, how we work with people, and what to expect. So from both Alex and I, have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Alex, anything else you want to add?
Appreciate being able to entertain you all for 47 minutes of your quarantine day, and hope the rest goes even better.
All right. Have a great one, guys.